Thank you, Madam President. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today and many tomorrows, and thank you for the new year and new opportunities to continue to serve the citizens of Tiffin. And may our hearts be with all those affected by the recent tragedy in New Orleans. Amen.
Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will have the clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Reesner.
Here.
Councilmember Snee.
Here.
Councilmember Thacker.
Here.
Councilmember Hayes.
Here.
Councilmember Herniman.
Here.
Councilmember Kaler.
Here.
Thank you. Let the record show all 7 members of council are present this evening. Minutes from December 16th, 2024, regular and committee of the whole meetings were distributed. Are there any questions, corrections, deletions on those? All right, those will stand approved as presented. We are now under committee reports. Finance Committee, Councilmember Reesner.
No report, Madam President.
Law and Community Planning, Councilmember Kaler.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Materials and Equipment, Councilmember Jones.
No report, Madam President.
Personnel and Labor Relations, Councilmember Hayes.
Thank you, Madam President. A meeting was held in City Chambers on December 30th, 2024. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss Mayor's request for legislation number 24-48, 24-49, 24-50, and 24-51. Attending were committee members John Hayes, Cheyenne Thacker, and John Kaler. Also attending were Council Member Scott Horniman, Mayor Lee Wilkinson, Law Director Zach Fowler, City Administrator Nick Dutro, Police Chief Dave Pauly, and Fire Chief Rob Chappell. Councilman Hayes called the meeting to order at 5:15 p.m. The meeting started with legislation 24-48, so changes to police promotions. Chief Pauly explained that the requested change is to allow for previous experience as a military police officer to count towards the experience threshold for applying for the rank of sergeant. Pauly stated the change is strictly for the rank of sergeant. Law Director Fowler confirmed that the current language would not allow for time as military police to be counted for requirements toward the promotion of the rank of sergeant. Test and assessment for the position will begin in February, necessitating that this legislation be passed with an emergency. Hayes motioned to have the law director draft legislation accepting the changes described by the police chief and declare an emergency. Kaler seconded it, and the motion passed 3-0. Fire Chief Chappell started the discussion of Mayor's request 24-49. Chappell explained that the current language states that the department is to send a new hire with a level 1 firefighter certification to the Ohio Fire Academy. Chappell said that a new option at EHOVI in Milan has opened up for accrediting a level 2 firefighter certification. This is a better fit for our firefighters who already have the level 1 accreditation. The requested change will allow for other options in choosing the accreditation for new hires. Kaler motioned to have the law director prepare legislation to accept the changes outlined in the request. Hayes seconded, and the motion carried on a vote of 3-0. Hayes read the list of reappointments being requested on Mayor's request for legislation 24-50. Mayor Wilkinson confirmed all appointees were happy to continue serving in their same capacity. Thacker motioned to have the law director prepare legislation to accept the reappointments. Hayes seconded, and the motion carried on a vote of 3-0. Request 24-51 was made to appoint Dr. Nathaniel Barris to the Seneca County Board of Health. Wilkinson read the past and current experience of Dr. Barris relevant to serving on the Board of Health. Wilkinson said he met with Dr. Barris and discussed the appointment. Hayes motion for the law director to draft legislation accepting the appointment of Dr. Barris to the Seneca Board of Health. Thacker seconded the motion, and the motion passed 3-0. And in other business, Fowler asked for a council member to introduce resolution authorizing the sale of city personal property, and Councilman Kaler volunteered. And with no other business, the meeting adjourned at 5:41 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions on that report? All right, that takes us to Recreation and Public Property. Councilmember Snee.
No report at this time, Madam President.
Awesome, thank you. Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers, Councilmember Thacker.
No report at this time, Madam President.
Thank you. And Economic Development and Downtown Planning, Councilmember Herniman.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Does anyone see the need to schedule a committee of the whole meeting? Okay, and we are now under reports of the officers. His Honor Mayor Lee Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam President.
I just want to report that the Sutton Bank Iceless Skating Rink, which opened December the 8th, has been open for about a month, and we've had 1,280 skaters. And there's been 19 free skate sessions purchased by individuals and businesses, and 3 private rentals, so things are going well. We've had a couple of cancellations due to weather, but that hasn't deterred very many skaters, so that's all good. I was able to participate in the swearing in of our new police officer on Friday, January 3rd. Congratulations to Cade Garrett, and his duty starts today as Officer Garrett. And right now, I'd like to introduce Bryce Riggs, the interim president CEO of TSEP, to give us a little update.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Do you need a microphone?
Yeah, I know. Probably people at home, they want to hear me or not, right? Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And it's been, this Thursday will be 3 weeks since it was announced that I was appointed as the interim president and CEO of the Tiffin Seneca Economic Partnership. Just want to provide a quick update. Obviously, I know how important the relationship is with the city of Tiffin for economic development services that we perform. And I want to let you know that I've been actively working with the team, with the administration to ensure that there's no disruption in service for the organization. Obviously, prior to, a lot of council members don't know that I worked for SIDEC, which was prior to TSEP, the Seneca Industrial and Economic Development Corporation, for about 4 years in economic development, and I've been a member of the downtown committees for about a decade. So obviously something that it's not not new territory to me, but maybe some of the terminology and projects are getting caught up to speed of where things are at, what's happening, but also being in the same office, it's been very nice that, really transition has been very minimal. And again, I know how important the relationship is with the city, for our organization, for the executive board, the whole entire TSEP board. And I just want to say that, we're excited to work with the city on some changes for the future, as well as some, it's an opportunity to kind of look back at past policies or those kind of things and say, we've always done it. Is that something we're going to continue? And I really appreciate this time working with the administration to relook at things and really ensure that Tiffin and Seneca County is the best place to live, work, play, and visit and do business. So with that, I'll open up for any questions anyone has. And if you'd like to meet one-on-one, that's not an open meeting. Law Director Fowler, that we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you guys have as well. But any questions for me or things that can help be of support for the city. Tomorrow's my first project coordination meeting, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
I just want to say thank you for stepping up, and look forward to a continued productive relationship with you and the TSEP staff. So looking forward to that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Bryce.
Okay, following that, I'd like to introduce Judge Damon Alt, and I know Judge Best is also here. I don't know if she's going to stand up and say a few words as well, but Judge Alt's going to give us a little information about the Pivot Court program.
Good evening. I do have a handout I'd like to hand, kind of an overview of the Pivot program. I guess that's as far as I can reach over. Before I begin, thank you, Tiffin City Council and Mayor Wilkinson, for allowing us as judges to come and talk about Pivot with you. I'm not sure how many people have been to one of the Pivot sessions. I know Mayor Wilkinson has on multiple occasions. And I'm going to give you a fairly specific kind of overview of Seneca County Pivot Recovery Program. Seneca County Pivot Recovery Program is a multi-jurisdictional specialized docket court, meaning we're, I believe, the only one in the state of Ohio that we have a combined court. Tiffin-Fostoria Municipal Court participates along with Common Police Court. So both Judge Schuff and I and Judge Best, we are all part of one. That's why it's a multi-jurisdictional specialized docket court. All judges have been certified as a specialty docket court judge through the Ohio Supreme Court. The certification process requires an application be filed as to how the court is run, the policies and procedures of the specialized docket court. There's also an on-site visit with a representative from the Ohio Supreme Court who observes a treatment team meeting and then spends the rest of the day watching Pivot Recovery Program. It's then referred to the Supreme Court for approval as a specialized docket recovery court. Certification occurs every 3 years. Our next certification will occur on December 31st, 2026. On or before, I should say. Pivot Recovery Program also has site visits from All Rise, which is the National Association of Recovery Courts. We just recently had a site visit from them. Both the Supreme Court and the All Rise site visits were a success, and the recommendations made were very minor, and most have already been implemented by all three judges. It was recently suggested that the Pivot Recovery Program could be a mentor court in the future for new and upcoming recovery courts. That's a testament of how well the treatment team and the judges are handling Pivot Recovery Program. Pivot Recovery Program takes approximately 15 months for a participant to complete. However, the program may be completed in less time, or it could take longer. We always say it doesn't matter how long it takes. Our focus is on the best interest of the individual participant and then their completing of the program and their recovery. Pivot Recovery Program has 4 cornerstones that are heavily emphasized for the participants in order for them to build a strong foundation to build their recovery on. Those cornerstones are show up, work hard, communicate, and honesty. Okay? And we always make sure the individuals focus on those. Pivot Recovery Program consists of 5 phases. Phase 1 is 60 days. Phase 2 through 5 are 90 days each. Throughout the program, participants attend court on Thursdays weekly. The men's session begins on Thursday mornings at 10:15 approximately, and the women's session begins at 11:30 a.m. Upon the successful completion of each phase, there's an inspirational saying that each participant reads out loud to the group prior to advancing. Those inspirational sayings are to coincide with where that participant is in their recovery and in the program. Prior to entering the program, there's a Pivot Participant Agreement that is signed by each participant, which states the rules and requirements of the Pivot Recovery Program. Some of the requirements are that Pivot participants must undergo random drug and alcohol testing, follow the rules of the Pivot program, meet all the phase requirements. Pivot's a lot of work in the initial phases. Phase 1 through 3 is where most of the programming occurs. And this programming can consist of cognitive skills, which is programs to kind of change their way of thinking, okay? Because if you want to change a person, you have to change the way they think. IOP, various groups along with meetings with case manager and probation officer. Then as the participant advances, the Pivot requirements are less in phase 4 and phase 5 because the participant has already learned skills, and we are looking to see in phases 4 and 5 them utilizing those skills in their own daily lives. Pivot Recovery Program follows the best practices of All Rise in the Ohio Supreme Court with using rewards for good behaviors and sanctions for bad behaviors. Examples of rewards are praised by the judges, certificates for participants' achievements for completing various milestones, like I said, like phase advancement. And also such as extended lengths of sobriety and gift cards for a fishbowl. The fishbowl is a weekly drawing for those participants that are advancing in phases or have completed programming, obtained employment, or shown other exceptional behavior. Examples of sanctions are increased drug alcohol testing, increased court reporting, phase extensions, behavior contracts, judicial reprimands. These sanctions could be due to missing a random urinalysis drug screen. Maybe they missed a meeting with a clinician. Maybe they missed one of the group meetings because those typically you have 10 minutes. If you're after 10 minutes, you miss the meeting. Or it could be a missed probation officer meeting or case manager meeting or a new use. The purpose of Pivot Recovery Program is not just to treat the participants, but to change them as a person. Make sure they have safe and stable housing, gainful employment, rebuild those relationships with their family and loved ones, and that's very important because a lot of those relationships aren't there when they come into Pivot. Develop pro-social activities and assist them in their own recovery to prevent recidivism. And we just went through the holiday season, and this is just on a side note. It was amazing how many participants in the program said, it was great this holiday season. I actually got the time to spend with my family and loved ones. Last year I was locked up. I was incarcerated. and you really see that emotion in the individuals because it does impact them. I have included the handout, which provides more in-depth explanation of the various phases and requirements of the Pivot Recovery Program. I would like to invite all of you to attend Pivot. Seneca County Pivot Recovery Program is held each Thursday, beginning at 10:15 for males, 11:30 for females. Right now, we are on the third floor in the Justice Center, which is Judge Shuff's courtroom. Okay, we do rotate between all three floors throughout the year. Right now, from January through the end of April is Judge Shuff on the third floor. I start taking over Pivot from May 1st through almost the end of August. Then Judge Best on the second floor takes over Pivot from last week of August or so through the end of the year. Okay, and we keep on that rotation. There's also been a letter that was signed and forwarded on to Tiffin City Council by all the judges requesting funding for the Pivot Recovery Program. I would just like to add any allocation of funds from the city of Tiffin would be greatly appreciated because we are always looking to make sure we have that program in place. We have already scaled back the program because we no longer have like SAMHSA grant money, which federal funding oftentimes is just seed money in order to get the program started. Well, once you get going with it, there's no more additional money coming from the federal government as to the SAMHSA grant. And so therefore, we're looking at local sources for funding, and we're exploring all grant opportunities. And Seneca County Commissioners have graciously, and we're very appreciative, allocated 2/3 of all future opioid settlement money coming through One Ohio Foundation to the Pivot program. So that is a commitment that could go out anywhere from 15, 17, 18 years, depending on how those settlement proceeds come through. We also received a grant, I'm sure most have heard, I believe it was $180,000 through One Ohio Foundation. We anticipate applying as much as we can towards any and all grants, okay? And additionally, any federal grants. And the court, the judges have also reached out to the city of Fostoria to see if they would provide some additional funding as well for the Pivot Recovery Program. That's all I have. I'd just like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you here tonight. I think Judge Best has a few things she'd like to say.
Well, I did talk to Mayor Wilkinson some months back and Mr. Dutro about the potential of the city committing some kind of funding toward Pivot because of how important it was. Judge Best, why don't you use the mic? Oh, excuse me. Usually I'm too loud. All right. So I wanted to bring in some statistics because we have a unique court, municipal court, along with common police court working together. That's unheard of in the state of Ohio. So what I have noticed since I've been in the court that the best intervention we can do is at the misdemeanor level. If we can get people early before things get out of hand, it's a really good time to try to have that intervention. So I wanted to look at how many municipal court participants that we have. We had 34 current participants. Of those 34, 21 of those individuals have municipal court cases. So well over half. Since we took over Pivot at the beginning of, was it October? The county took over the funding and the operation totally of Pivot. We have had at least 4 graduations of municipal court participants, people that have been in and out of the system for years. One of the things I noticed when I first took over is that there had been very limited interaction with Pivot by municipal court for some time. So I've taken it upon myself to make sure that there's a lot more participation again, more referrals. And I think we've done so. And it's been really cool to work together with common police court. It's unique. Most municipal court judges definitely don't have common police jurisdiction at all. So that's really interesting for me to be able to have that opportunity and be able to help serve the citizens of the entire county. So any questions about any of the statistics that we talked about or any of the other information?
Yeah. Anything in general?
Mayor Wilkinson.
As you mentioned, I have attended a couple of those Pivot sessions, and one of the sessions I attended was a graduation, and it is quite emotional when you see the graduates of the Pivot program and their families come to kind of view the graduation and they, tell their story. That's really nice. I was just wondering, is there a follow-up after graduation to find out like where these graduates are like a year from now and 2 years from now?
Well, in general, we keep each participant on an aftercare program through probation in each of the courts for a certain number of months, depending on what their needs are. We've also discussed starting an alumni group where we're going to have some functions where Pivot alumni can come back and we'd have different interaction with them to see updates and things like that.
Yeah, I think we were looking at maybe like a summertime, like a picnic gathering, get all those former graduates in, and judges will cook for them, and it'll just be like a nice outdoor setting, them bring their families, and just meet, catch up, see how they're doing. And we still see a lot of those graduates around town, too.
We do.
And you can always tell how well somebody's doing because they'll be waving hello to you or yelling, hey, Judge, you know? And that shows that they're doing well.
It's a great sign when people
Yeah.
make eye contact.
Yeah, if they turn their head down and try and go the other way and you have to yell out their name, then you know that something's amiss, usually. So it's great to see, but that's a very good point, and we do want to keep in contact with these individuals. Plus, they can be mentors for other individuals in the groups, too. And it's amazing how much the other participants will help out other participants, say with job referrals, that's a big one.
Rides.
And rides, that's a big one. It's amazing how many individuals in our community do not have licenses. Okay, I don't see that as much in common police court, but Judge Beth
See it
does.
every week.
And it's amazing. And part of the funding with Pivot, we have 2 community support specialists. So what they do is they try and individuals will let them know what appointments they have, and they'll drive around between Fostoria and Tiffin to get them to their appointments for treatment, for meetings with case managers, to court, because they have no other means. And we also utilize SCAD as much as we can as well.
Oh, okay, very good, very good. I would encourage anyone to go and see some of the proceedings there in the Pivot Court. It's very interesting.
We do have an admission of a municipal court participant this Thursday. I'm actually covering for Judge Shuff on Thursday, so anybody wants to come, you could see an admission on Thursday, along with some other things. I think we actually have two new female admissions on Thursday, so that's a little different than the graduation, but it's the second best day in Pivot.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I think with with the judges taking over Pivot, we're making sure we have a group that wants to be there, a group that wants help, wants treatment, because all we can do is provide them the tools. It's up to them to accept those tools and utilize them in their daily lives. And so our numbers are lower than maybe a couple years ago, where it might have been 100 and some in the program. But now we're probably looking at our ideal is maybe in the 50s, you know, to make sure we have time to meet all their needs. And we have a good core group of individuals that want to succeed and take their sobriety seriously. It's not just get out of jail.
With current staffing levels, that's probably the number. It needs to be around 50. But if we can build later, I think we're open to that for sure.
Keep in mind, when we also, as part of the screening, when people come in, we're seeing individuals that are trafficking in drugs, things like that, and profiting off drugs. We're not putting them into Pivot, okay? Because there's an unwritten rule. You don't want to put individuals that are selling drugs into a group of individuals trying on the path of recovery, okay? So we are very mindful of who we refer, and then all judges. We hear from the treatment team after they have their legal screen and their assessments done. All 3 judges then will vote on whether or not those individuals should come into Pivot.
And you need 3 votes to get in. So,
Okay.
in case anybody was wondering that one. I don't think it used to be that way. I think it was majority, but now it's unanimous, so.
Cool.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come up.
Thank you.
Do we have another?
Other questions?
And for either one of you, just a couple of questions. Of your participants, how many are from the city of Tiffin?
I think of the 21 that I referenced earlier, I think 17 of those were Tiffin people.
Okay. You
It's a
mentioned,
little more limited because of the 3 counties, so not everybody's eligible for Pivot.
okay. You mentioned Fostoria. Have they committed any funds yet?
We have heard that they are committing. It hasn't been official yet.
Yeah.
Okay. And the county commissioners committed 2/3?
Correct.
Do they have any other programming planned for their remaining third?
I believe it's EMS, isn't it?
I think there might be something EMS related
Okay.
on that 1/3.
Okay. I had another one that I lost. So maybe just so you're aware, we don't know how much we get every year because I don't know if you're familiar with the way the setup is, but the funding comes directly from the defendants out of that settlement to local governments. So we don't know what we get because the amounts we've gotten year to year, the last couple of years have been different. As far as your funding goes, like, I guess what would be an acceptable amount from council to your program?
Well, the thing is, I think the way we view funding too is like that 2/3, like you were just discussing. You're right, we don't know what those exact amounts are, okay? So the one thing is when those amounts are allocated, say the next year it's a little lower, we have extra funds available to offset maybe lower distributions. And I think that's the way we're kind of viewing it. Right now, we haven't had a full year as to what all of our expenses are on our budgets, okay? We only budgeted for a couple months. Now we're on the year, and we're just kind of seeing where we are with expenses and with our staffing needs too, okay? So right now, the budget, I do not have a copy of it with me. I could get a copy of the budget, come back next meeting if you'd like to hear what our budget is for Pivot for the year. I mean, that's fine.
Well, I want to put it on our agenda for our next meeting here, which is 20th? 2 weeks.
20th.
2 weeks from now, 21st.
21st.
About the 21st.
Because I gave every council member a little spreadsheets about how to divide up our funds from the national opioid settlement. And actually, I was able to log in and find out a little bit more detailed about how much we will be getting. So
Good.
for the next 7 years, it seems like it's going to be fairly consistent around 18,000 a year. But then after 2032, it drops off significantly after that. So we'll take a look at those numbers more carefully, and we'll discuss it next meeting, and we'll see what we come up with.
We would appreciate any commitment from the city of Tiffin.
Okay?
I just have two quick questions. How often do you, and maybe I missed it, how often do you accept new participants?
Well, ideally, it'd be at least one a week, but we haven't accepted any until this, I think this past week was our first new admission in a while because of the restructuring. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't overwhelming the staff because we had to reduce the staff a little bit. So we're working on that right now. That's the plan at the moment, is at least one a week.
Okay, and then my second, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, the process is we make the referral maybe early part of the case. They come before me on an arraignment, okay, based on the nature of the offense. And if this individual and the prosecutors and the defense counsel may talk and say, we think this individual may be a good candidate for Pivot, okay? I talk with the individual a little bit about Pivot, what it is, the program, and then ask if they'd like a referral made. We make the referral. Okay, it doesn't mean they're getting into Pivot, but we start the process. So as the course runs, its path, we already know, and we can get the legal screen done, we can get the assessment done to see if they even qualify for Pivot, okay? Because you still have to qualify for Pivot. You got to meet a certain level of care, and you got to meet the legal screen. As Judge Best said, you got to reside in Seneca County.
You can't be on probation in other jurisdictions.
Yep.
You can't be on PRC through the state.
So, and then the judges will vote based on what the treatment team says, if they're in favor or not in favor. And then once we know they're able to come into Pivot, we really try and kind of set our docket, I know I do, to maybe in the upcoming week, can we get counsel back in? Maybe we'll do a change of plea and sentencing all at once, okay? Just to get them into Pivot sooner, so they can start getting services. And one other thing I would like to add too, we do work a lot with, are any of you familiar with HOPE, based out of Fostoria? They manage recovery housing, sober living for Mental Health Recovery Services Board. So we do work a lot with them as part of stable housing for individuals. It's sober living, okay? And Phoenix House was one of the newer ones that was just opened next to Seneca County Probation Services, Pretrial Services, and where Pivot's located now at 183 Perry Street. So we do work a lot with them to make sure we have that stable, safe home.
The other thing I wanted to mention with regard to the admission process, we do like to stagger them out because we don't want a lot of people in each phase at once. There's a lot more intensive work in the early phases. So if you spread them out a little bit more, then that kind of reduces the overall burden on the staff.
What would you say the average cost per participant is?
I don't know, we've analyzed that lately.
I don't think we have. Not with our new budgets, we have not analyzed like cost per participant.
We've significantly reduced the cost per participant by handling it ourselves.
Okay, cool.
I do have one more question, yeah. What would you say your graduation rate, your success rate is? And how often do you see similar participants, or is it kind of a one and done once you're in the program? If you don't complete, are you given that opportunity again?
We've had people be terminated, and we welcome them back depending on the situation. We've had people graduate and do a second round of pivot a few years later. It just depends on each individual participant. And success rate's kind of one of those terms, I'm not sure what it really means, because even if it's.
Yeah, I guess graduation rate's probably a better, right, because you have a certain number of people, and if they complete the program, then that's probably a better.
I don't know that we've looked at that in the last couple months since we took it over, but I do know that one thing we've discussed more than once is sometimes people can't make it to graduation for lots of different reasons. There can be severe mental health that they can't get to that point. We get them as far as we can. Sometimes that's the success of Pivot, that we get them farther than maybe standard probation would have been able to get them with the resources available.
Okay,
Would you say
Yeah.
that covers that?
And we also have another component with Pivot. I'm not sure if you all are aware. Oriana House was awarded a SAMHSA enhancement grant. And it's going to be another component. I think it's $2 million over the course of 4 years. Now, that money cannot be used for Pivot, but it's used to provide the additional enhanced mental health services, okay? So some of those individuals that maybe we wouldn't be able to help due to their mental health needs, because they call it co-occurring disorders, mental health plus a substance abuse addiction, sometimes you see some pretty significant mental health issues for individuals. And there's concerns, how far can we help them with that? So now with this enhancement grant, Oriana House, Rigel Recovery Services, will be working with Pivot to provide some additional help there to individuals that we would not have the typical mental health resources for. It's more enhanced, specialized caseworker for mental health and some other things as well.
Thanks.
I thought of my other question. So Pivot's really aimed at trying to tackle this issue after there's been a crime, right? It's kind of reactionary to what people are doing. If Seneca County, Fostoria, Tiffin, if we're all going to take our opioid money and all of us funnel 2/3 into Pivot, I guess my question is, what are other kind of programs that we do with the remaining money? And or if we're sending the majority of it to Pivot, are we even really holding back enough other funds to address opioid in a different way? That's kind of my question to either one of you. If we tackle it from a different angle, are we all going in the same direction? Is that acceptable if, let's say the city decides not to send much or any money to Pivot, but we're using it for a different purpose?
I guess when I view Pivot as the most intensive probation program we have for individuals. You're coming to court weekly. You have some of these individuals, for example, the PHP program. I think it's 20 or 30 weeks, 5 days a week, like 3 or 4 hours a day, okay? You are going for intensive treatment, okay? And that's about as intensive as we can get. Now, we also still have our probation departments operating. We still will reach out to other counseling services depending on where they're at, other treatment centers depending where they're at. Those individuals will be ordered to complete any treatment through those programs. And typically Medicaid will pay for those, okay, because those are billed by the provider. The court's not paying for those, okay? Same with a lot of Pivot programs too. Pivot programs, if you go to Rigel or things like that, you're paying through Medicaid. We try and get people set up so they can qualify for treatment and have Medicaid funds available to pay for that. Because otherwise, if we had to pay for the exact treatment costs on all these programs, it would probably cost millions. If you have to do inpatient stays as part of Pivot, because sometimes when people come into Pivot, say for example, their level of care is like a 3.5, that means they need to go to inpatient. So we send them into inpatient, that may be 90 days. We would never be able to afford the costs on the local level to pay for their inpatient care and all those other care needs that they have. So Medicaid will handle that, and they'll be billed by the treatment providers.
And I feel like Pivot has really localized those resources. It's a good place for a starting point for those individuals that might need those resources that wouldn't know how to get there.
Yeah, because keep in mind, a lot of our funding is staffing. It's not actually on the programs, because Medicaid is paying for those programs and treatment. And our staffing, we have 2 case managers, 1 probation officer, 2 community support specialists, a COG skills individual. Now, that is a cost when we run like cognitive skills training, such as maybe employment groups, thinking for a change groups, things like that. We are paying for that cost, though, because we're paying for that COG skills specialist. We're not billing out Medicaid, anything like that, okay? Because that's in-house treatment we're providing right at 183 Perry Street. And our program coordinator, who also doubles as our probation officer. Okay, so we pretty much really streamlined on 50 participants to our target, around 50 participants, to work with that team of individuals.
I want to say something about Zach's question, just kind of hone in on what you were getting at. I think because we have additional funds, possibly we're not going to donate all of our funds to the PIP program. We have the DARE program that's being reinstituted by our police department. And it's not the DARE program of old, it's a new and upgraded DARE program. It should be more effective than it has been in the past. And we have a presentation coming on February the 18th from Chief Pauly about the new DARE program. So
Yeah, we've
we'll learn
committed
about
those opioid funds, or appropriated them to DARE program last year. We added it to the budget, and it's in this year's budget. So it's just something that the council will have to consider, is trying to do both, and if that's what you're going to do. But that's just why I put it out there, just food for thought of.
I think
We've
preventative
already taken
education
that.
is important also, but the treatment end with what we're doing would be equally important.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much
This
for
is very
coming in.
helpful.
And that concludes my report, Madam President.
All right. Clerk of Council Ann Forrest,
No report, Madam President.
Director of Finance Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to mention a couple things tonight. On your legislation, I have asked for 2 suspensions, ordinance 2025-1 and ordinance 2025-4. 2025-1 has to do with carryover purchase orders. So we still have some purchase orders open from last year's budget to pay like December bills that we have not received yet. So those need to be approved by you so that we can use them. And we wanted to make sure it's suspended so that we can get all those bills paid timely. And then ordinance 2025-4 is our pay ordinance. We reference the state minimum wage in our ordinance, and that recently went up, so we just need to amend that to the correct amount.
Okay. Thank you.
And then one other thing, my office is now handling the credit card reporting for you. And that was sent out today with the agenda change memo. So the tax commissioner's handling that now, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware, and if you had any questions about that.
Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve the credit card report, fourth quarter 2024 credit card compliance report.
Okay. There's a motion to pass or accept the fourth quarter credit card report. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Louder.
Sure. It may be a little bit premature. I'd probably wait until the report's read by the clerk and then make the motion. So you could withdraw it or table it, however you like.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from you, Kathy?
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director of Law, Zach Fowler.
Thank you. So I have a few things for you all. One is, see if that comes up. There we go. So I have a few things. So first is, so by statute, I have to give you all an annual report on your first meeting. So I will cover that. And then I have a few legislative things that happen at the state level that I thought would be of interest to you, and a few other little annual things to touch on. So I will cover my report first. That's the statute that says I got to give you a report on what my office does at the first meeting in January. So here we go. And also touch on real quick, it says to report on any monies that my office has collected. I don't have any cash on me that I've collected. Anything if we did is immediately given over to Kathy. I think we had like one thing. There was like that farm lease payment that came to me, but I don't hold on any city money. That's for sure. So just to report on the office. So there's myself. We have a city prosecutor or an assistant director of law and administrative assistant. What do we do? That's what the charter says. But we serve as the attorney for the city. We also serve as the prosecuting attorney on behalf of the city. If there is litigation, if the city is sued or there's an employee, we are designated attorney for the city unless, we get outside counsel for something, an insurance matter, et cetera. All right, so talk about prosecutor's office first. So just to wind you back a bit, at the end of December of 23, the prosecutor's office had a contract with the city to manage the city's prosecutor's office. That ended. So beginning of last year, the city prosecutors back here in City Hall, directly managed by myself, as well as our administrative assistant, and then we are under contract with the prosecutor's office, county prosecutor's office, for a little extra part-time help. We made a few changes, updated some of the furniture, added some computers. Again, as that office was out of City Hall for a couple of years, that was needed, and we added in a little bit of practice management software just to help keep them electronic and as paperless as we can be. But this comes right out of our software, so this is nice. This is not completely up to date because we adopted the software in April, so this didn't go from January to December. But this is a snapshot as of today. This just gives you an idea. We've got about 130 or so open cases with us. Over the last 12 months there, you'll see we had 371. It was probably more than that because we didn't track the whole year, and closed out 241. Things go fast. Her Honor's here. She could tell you, John Kaler could tell you, we have speedy trial rules, minor misdemeanors at 30 days, mid-level 45, and our first and second degree, we have to have the trial by 90 days. So things go fast. These cases move quickly. But this just gives you a different chart. You can kind of see our open close, the green being the open, the darker color being the close. And you can see as, again, in May when we started getting everything in there, but you can see as the year went on, our staff has done a good job of working those cases, getting things closed, not carrying things for too long. Makes Her Honor happy as well. I can give you the court stats, but I can't break it down between Tiffin and Fostoria and how many we had. I looked that way. They had about, I don't know if your numbers are up to date as of like November, but last I had checked, they had about 4,700 cases total. But again, that's a mix of Fostoria and Tiffin, and a lot of those are traffic cases, and we tend not to see those because speeding tickets, people often just waive and pay the fee, and it's not something that we handle. But for our office, it's a lot of OVIs, higher level misdemeanors, assaults, domestic violence, those kind of cases. But we do have some lower traffic cases that are contested that we have to work through. If you recall, we had a prosecutor when we started, and then now we have a different one. Andy Bauscher, current prosecutor, started in May. Andy's done a great job. I don't know if you all looked that closely at your budget, but we did work in a raise for him for this year because it's well warranted. He's added quite a bit, and I thought I would just share this. This was from one of our officers, and this was just an email I got from him. I just wanted to give kudos to Andy Bauscher for his work he has been doing for the police department, and I can say I'm not the only one who has noticed this. He's been calling officers involved in the cases he's working on to get opinions, run ideas by, and get our feedback from us. I've been with Tiffin PD going on 11 years, and I've never had such a great communication with the city or county prosecutor as I have had with Andy. I know it's not something he has to do, but goes out of his way to do it even though it takes more time throughout his day. He's easy to get along with, eager to learn, and does not get pushed around by the attorneys that he has to work with while remaining professional and respectful. He's a breath of fresh air, and I would love for him to stay with us. I'm not sure if you're aware of the turnover we've had for this position, but I would ask you for you to do what we can to keep him here with us at Tiffin. Doing this job and having the communication and support of the prosecutor makes our job so much better and feels more like a team rather than two divisions looking to close on a case. So, like I said, Andy's been well appreciated. I think he is what I was looking for in a prosecutor. So we've been very happy to have him. Okay, on to the other side, kind of the civil side, which is basically me. So one of my main jobs with you all is legislation. So we did 150 pieces of legislation last year. If you recall, we had 107 ordinances, 43 resolutions, maybe a bit more because there was one or two drafts that never made it to council, but you guys were busy. On the litigation end, thankfully, we did not have a whole lot last year. We just had a mortgage foreclosure that we were part of. If you're aware at all, we work with GL Cap on some of these loans, like a CHIP loan that was for improvements for someone's house, who financially needed the help. There was a mortgage foreclosure. We're not getting paid out of it. The borrower, Rose, had died back in 2021. We never took any action with the estate, and so because of the nature of the law, the remaining balance is something that we will just not recover. But that is our only litigation for the year. Real estate matters, many of these you're familiar with, or all of them you should be, but we had the purchase of the land over on Water Street. We had one annexation, the farm on Tiber Road, your 4 alley vacations, Frost Parkway, Heavenly Pizza over on Market and St. Clair, Front Street, and then the East Market and Circular for the new Dunkins. And then the only one sewer easement. We'll probably have more as we work through our sewer stuff, but this was just a simple correction. And yeah, the rest of it was just working with staff, giving opinions when needed, reviewing contracts, writing contracts, several seminars throughout the year. And if any of you know my predecessor and his love for paper, it's been a start of scanning and getting as much into a PDF as we can, and that will take a while. So for this year, one of the things we did was make sure that we brought the codified ordinances up to date. I'm just going to continue on that. I've already emailed the publisher because the goal is every 6 months to do that. So we'll bring it up current through the end of last year. Something else I want to put together is doing training for you. I thought would be nice for new council members when they come, but also those that are on our various boards and committees to have, some kind of welcome packet for them. I've heard that from some people on some of these committees. They're like, nobody tells me what to, I'm supposed to do. So that'll take some time, but I would like to put that together for everyone on those. Continue to attend, there'll be some seminars. We're members of the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association. They put on some good seminars for us the spring, the summer, and the winter. We'll keep scanning. It's going to take a while. And then our contract with the county on the part-time prosecutor ends in June. So then after that, it'll be kind of trying to figure out filling that slot. So as good as Andy is, it's nice to have another person around. One, if he's unavailable, to have that person, but also to help with the caseload. So that is my report for the year. Any questions on any of those things? Yes, sir.
I don't have a question. I do want to say there is one thing that I noticed that you do a lot of that you left out, and that is render opinions and advice on many different matters when we're in meetings down in our planning meetings and everything else that we're doing. So appreciate that.
Welcome. So I do have a few just kind of update things for you guys. One, you probably got the email already, but just a reminder, Ohio ethics law, you have to make your annual financial disclosure. It's not due till it's May 15th. You got time, but don't forget, you got to do that. The other one, for my council members at large and council president, don't forget, you need to get your petitions done and turned into the Board of Elections by February 5th, if you're doing that. So don't forget. Just as another thing that came about last year that's worth mentioning is some of these people that we're bringing on to boards and committees. For all of you, the state auditor added that fraud training. So it's just every 4 years. So we are tracking it. The auditor's going to be asking for it in the annual audit and all that. But so you may hear from Kathy or someone in her office of, don't forget, we got to do that. But that's, again, why I want to do the welcome packet, because there's always those things that people need to do. If you remember, so for contracts, if it's above the competitive bidding amount, administration is going to bring it to you for authority. Last year, that amount was $75,000. It goes up by 3% every year now. This year, it's up to $77,250. So staff knows, but just went up a little bit. So that's those things. But from state legislature perspective, there's a few things that I think you all should be aware of because they may come your way. The first one was House Bill 315, called the Christmas tree bill, because they were just shoving things in left and right at the end. But there's a few little bits in there for us. If you recall, the Parks Department has to now put out defibrillators kind of where the kids play, basically. They modified that language just to say it's only required when there's an organized youth sports activity happening at that point. So if there's just people in the park playing, we don't have to have a defibrillator there. But when you've got the organized baseball, cross country, whatever that's going on at one of our parks, that's when. So that limits it. It's going to make it a little easier on our Parks Department as to when we have to have those out there. It wouldn't necessarily be 24/7. The other thing that may come our way is in that bill, they authorize $1.5 million for grants related to zoning updates. So if we wanted some kind of study done or a consultant to look at our zoning code and make recommendations, that's where this grant money would come in. The other thing on 315 that came in for our police department is, you may not be aware, but our officers wear body cam. We get requests for body cam and dash cam. And under the public records law, it's a public record, but then there's a list of exceptions of things that aren't. And so it takes time and staff to, when there's that request for that footage, to go through it and make sure that those things that are not allowed to be disclosed are taken out. So that takes a lot of time. So there's been urging from local governments and police departments to put this in to essentially allow charging a certain fee for producing that. Public records, the basics of it is you can only charge those actual costs that you incur. And so what this is doing is putting in another section about what law enforcement can do when they're producing a video on a request for body cam, dash cam. And so they can charge, the cap is $75. I think it's like per video, but then there's a cap of like up to $750. So there's some limits on it. So what we'll be doing with police is coming up with a policy and figuring out an appropriate amount that reflects the time that they spend on editing that and responding to those requests. So a few other little quick things. Probably doesn't occur here as a whole lot, but it does. Operation of drones. Mostly you see people use it for hobby activities. They are implementing now. There'll be some laws about the operation of them, but as a legislative body, they did 2 carve-outs for municipalities. One is you can craft rules on Tiffin's use, the government's use of drones. So if police or public works or engineer, whoever, parks, if you wanted to craft rules as far as using those, basically this says you can. The other is use by like those hobbyists of a drone at public property. So most often like a park, but could be other areas of public government. So you'll be able to, again, this is, we talk about those local government home rule powers and not conflicting with general laws. This is where the state says people were kind of setting a general law, but you, municipality, can set some rules. So it may come up, you may get requests in the future of, hey, maybe we need to say, somebody can't fly a drone at the park at these hours or set some limits. So I just raised that just so that you're aware. You may hear that there was a bill to allow virtual meetings for certain public bodies, and that law did pass. Council's not included. So if you're, if it's a body where the people are elected to that body, they're accepted from it. But it would work for some of these boards that you appoint people to. If they could potentially, if they wanted to hold a virtual meeting, they could. So just FYI there. The one thing that didn't pass that will most likely get taken up again is there was some push on increasing funding on the employer side for Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund. That's likely to come back up. So it would if it does go through, it will have a financial impact. It'll be an increased expense on the city's end. So that's all those things. Last one was at the federal level that some of you may have interest in, but passed at the end of last year was the Social Security Fairness Act. So if you have worked in public government and were getting those benefits, if Social Security, some of those things were carved out and you weren't getting those benefits. They've repealed those. So they're basically an increase in benefits. So, for staff, for example, it's good for them. Those that have worked a long time and then retire, they won't have reduced benefits under Social Security. I think that's everything.
Is that all?
I think that's all. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. That takes us to written communications.
We have mayor's request for legislation number 25-1, mobile food unit vendors license.
Thank you. Mayor's request for legislation number 25-1 is assigned to the Lawn Community Planning Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-2, road salt competitive bid acquisition.
Thank you. Mayor's request for legislation number 25-2 is assigned to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-3, street sweeper lease.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-3 is also assigned to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-4, curb lawn restoration program.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-04 is assigned to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-5, 2025 river and creek wall rehabilitation.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-5 is assigned to the Lawn Community Planning Committee.
And then also we have the fourth quarter credit card compliance report.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for I move to accept the fourth quarter 2024 credit card compliance report.
Thank you. There's a motion to accept the fourth quarter credit card compliance report. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We are now under oral communications. Anyone wishing to address council may step to the podium, sign in, and direct their questions to myself. All right, we are now under motions. Are there any motions this evening? Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to have resolutions 2025-3 through 2025-11 to be read and voted on as one.
Thank you. There is a motion for resolutions 2025-3 through 2025-11 to be read and voted on as one. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
I'm just confirming, these are all reappointments. All members are currently serving, and the mayor is confirmed with each individually that they are willing to continue serving in their current fashion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Any other motions this evening? All right, that takes us to resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 2025-1, introduced by John Kaler, a resolution authorizing the sale during calendar year 2025 of municipally owned personal property which is not needed for public use or which is obsolete or unfit for the use for which it was acquired by internet auction pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 721.15D, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 25-1. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I move for immediate passage of Resolution 2025-1, suspending the three reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion to suspend council's three reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 25-1. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, the reason for this request would be that the next auction for such items is coming up in March, and the immediate passage of the resolution would give us the time needed to get the items ready for that March auction.
Thank you. Law Director.
Sure. Just a reminder for all of you, we do this every year. That statute, that 721.15, just requires that if you're going to do internet auction, this is for personal property that the city no longer has use for, But to allow the internet auction of it, you just have to have this resolution in place.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Resolution 25-1 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Resolution number 2025-2, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker, a resolution declaring the necessity of an election on the question of approving the passage of an ordinance to amend sections 197.012 and 197.013 of the codified ordinances of the City of Tiffin, Ohio, in order to provide for the continuation of an existing 1/4% municipal income tax increase for a continuing period of time to provide funds to pay certain costs of maintaining, repairing, and improving public streets in the city and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 25-2. Yes. Hello, Doctor.
Yeah, just to reiterate, was discussed at Committee of the Whole, kind of for public benefit, but what you're looking at doing is taking the current road and bridge levy, it's a quarter of the income tax, which is a 5-year period, and we're going to convert this over to a continuing period. That's the language used, but permanent is the idea. But as we discussed, you have two pieces of legislation with this. You have a resolution, which is to put the issue on the ballot, and then the actual ordinance itself, which will be read here later, would be the actual then change to the tax code. As discussed, you have a deadline of February 5th to get this resolution passed and to the Board of Elections so that it can get on the ballot for the May primary. So you can suspend this if you want. Like we discussed, if you wanted 3 readings, you would just need a special meeting. The ordinance itself can get read at least 2 times, and then we'll need to get tabled, and then it won't then get a 3rd reading after the election.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2025-3, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Mark Simoti to serve a 3-year term on the ADA Advisory Committee from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2027. Resolution number 2025-4, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Amber Klassen to serve a 3-year term on the Architectural Board of Review from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2027. Resolution. I'm sorry, I got them out of order here. 1 second. Resolution number 2025-4, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment. Oh, I read that one, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
On to 5. A resolution approving mayor's reappointment, I wasn't missing it, of David Culp to serve a 5-year term on Julia M. Weller Memorial Commission from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2029. Resolution number 2025-6, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of George Fretz Jr. to serve a 4-year term on the Park and Recreation Board from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2028. Resolution number 2025-7, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Danny J. Yanatuno to serve an unexpired term on the Park and Recreation Board from the date of this resolution until December 31st, 2027. Resolution number 2025-8, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Jeff Kuhn to serve a 6-year term on the Sewer Review Board from January 21st, 2025 until December 31st, 2030. Resolution number 2025-9, a resolution introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Christy Weiser to serve a 5-year term on the Tree Commission from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2029. Resolution number 2025-10, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Dr. Susan Carty to serve a 5-year term on the Tree Commission from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2029. And resolution number 2025-11, introduced by John Hayes, a resolution approving mayor's reappointment of Joan Martin to serve a 4-year term on the Tiffin Recreation and Beautification Endowment Fund Board from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2028.
Thank you. This is the first reading of resolutions 25-3 through 25-11. Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like the motion for passage of resolutions 2025-3 through 2025-11.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of resolutions 25-3 through 25-11. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Thacker.
Just to reiterate, these are reappointments of people who have served on these boards that are competent and well qualified to do so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman.
I'd just like to thank everyone for serving on these boards and commissions. It's really important work for the city, and it is greatly appreciated.
Great. Thank you. If there's no other discussion, we can vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Resolutions 25-3 through 25-11 pass with a vote of 7-0. You look like you were going to say something, so it's making me nervous. Okay.
One second here. Resolution number 2025-12, introduced by John Hayes. Resolution approving mayor's appointment of Dr. Nathaniel Beers to serve a 5-year term on the Seneca County Board of Health from January 1st, 2025 until December 31st, 2029.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 25-12. Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like the motion for passage of resolution 2025-12.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of Resolution 25-12. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Resolution 25-12 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2024-105, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker. An ordinance authorizing and directing the city administrator to prepare plans and specifications, advertise for and receive bids, recommend and execute a contract for the Court Streetscape project, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the second reading of Ordinance 24-105.
Ordinance number 2025-1, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance 2024-94 to provide funds for expenditures approved in 2024 for projects which were not fully completed in that year and must be carried over into 2025.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Ordinance 25-1. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President, and I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-1, suspending city council's reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of Ordinance 25-1. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
Just a point of clarification, point of information here. This is the funding for the 2024 Expenditures not yet completed. These are carryover POs, and it's basically what it says in the ordinance.
Awesome, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-1 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-2, introduced by John Hayes. An ordinance to amend the civil service regulations for the police department's promotion requirements by amending sections 149.031 and 149.032 of the codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 25-2. Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like to motion for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-2, suspending council's 3 reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 25-2. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yeah, this change will allow for previous experience as a military police officer to count towards the experience threshold for applying to the rank of sergeant. The reason for the suspension tonight is the police department is planning on starting the testing and interview process in February for the eventual promotion to sergeant.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-2 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-3, introduced by John Hayes. An ordinance to amend section 143.03 of the codified ordinances to allow a new firefighter to obtain the Firefighter 2 certificate at an accredited program similar to the Ohio Fire Academy and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 25-3. Councilmember Hayes.
I'd like the motion for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-3, suspending council's 3 reading rule.
Thank you. There is a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage for ordinance 25-3. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second the motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, currently we have, the language is written so that basically the new hire has to attend the Ohio Fire Academy. This language change will allow us other options if those are deemed better for the department.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-3, it passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-4, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending Section 2 of ordinance number 2024-95, the city pay ordinance, to correct the minimum wage amount for 2025 and declaring an emergency.
This is the first reading of ordinance 25-4. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-4, suspending city council's reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 25-4. Is there a second? Councilmember Jones.
I second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. This is follow-up to the ordinance we passed last year for the city pay ordinance. This takes into account the minimum wage adjustment that the state put in place.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yep.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Herniman.
Yes.
And Kaler.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-4 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-5, introduced by Cheyenne Thacker. An ordinance amending sections 197.012 and 197.013 of the codified ordinances of the city of Tiffin, Ohio, in order to provide for the continuation of an existing 1/4% municipal income tax increase for a continuing period of time to provide funds to pay certain costs of maintaining, repairing, and improving public streets in the city.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 25-5.
And that concludes the legislation.
Okay, thank you. We are now under other business. Councilmember Thacker.
Yes, I'd like to announce a streets, sidewalks, and sewers meeting for Monday, January 13th at 5:15 PM in council chambers. And the purpose is to discuss mayor's request for legislation 25-02, 03, 04, and any other business that comes before that committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Kaler.
Madam President, I would like to announce a meeting of the Law and Community Planning Committee, also on January 13th, 2025, immediately following the Sidewalk, Streets, and Sewers Committee meeting in council chambers to address mayor's request for legislation 25-01 and 25-05, and any other business that comes before the committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Snee.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to announce a committee meeting for the recreation and public property on the same day, on Monday. And after the 2 meetings, street sidewalks and law and community planning, to discuss the,
Let's see.
looking for it, I know.
These were mayor's requests for legislation 2452 and 2453.
2452 and 24, what?
53.
53, okay. Discuss request for legislation from the mayor, 2452 to 2453.
And any other business to come before.
And any other business that might come before the committee.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? No? All right. Well, we can adjourn. Thank you all very much. Good first meeting of the year.
See, I didn't know any of the numbers.
Your stuff wasn't too
I don't know
lengthy.
any
Have
of
you ever sat through a?
Dan gave me